Welcome back, everybody. Hey there, Kate.
Hey.
Hey. So today we are going to talk about the difference between copy and content. And this is actually a pretty important difference, and there are surprisingly a few people, even in the industry, who understand it. So as copywriters or as content writers, it's really important that we know the difference. You certainly don't want to be marketing yourself as a copywriter when all of your samples are actually for content. That's a great way to not get a call back.
Yeah, and I mean, many of us do both, copy and content writing, but that still doesn't mean we can kind of mix the terms and conflate the two. As you said, it's kind of a surefire way to also point yourself out as very new and green to a field where, once you have the training, you want to come across as the expert because you're the copy expert, and as a copywriter, that's very different than content writing.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And they both have very different goals, very different things that they provide a company, very different uses within a company. And quite frankly, as we'll see, very different payment structures. So let's just go ahead and dig in.
Yeah.
Last episode, we talked about what copywriting is. So we'll go much shorter than we took in the last episode because we had a lot of extra information in there as well. But the definition of copywriting is really writing that is designed to sell or to persuade. And unless people are worried about that capital S sales and we're being salesy or pushy, it's really about making a connection between a target audience who has a want or a need and the company or the organization that has the solution to that want or that need. And we make that connection by creating copy that helps the target audience understand that this company has the solution, that really resonates with the target audience and makes them go, oh my gosh, that's what I need. So that's what we do as copywriters. Content, though, is different. Content is writing that is designed to educate, to entertain, or to inspire. So it is your blog posts, it's articles, that kind of thing. It's some types of videos, some types of quizzes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it can be very fun, but it obviously has a very different purpose in a company. Generally, the purpose of content is to engage people with the company, to get to know the company a little bit better, to get them coming back, and to get them participating more with the company.
Yeah. So it's, for example, to put it in context of where you might have seen content and what types of things fall under that, like the how-to blog posts, the top 10 overwater bungalows in the Maldives blog posts, which I know, super fans of, or like which Little Mermaid is your best friend, which Little Mermaid character, I should say, is your best friend. There's only one Little Mermaid. But, is it Sebastian or Flounder? So those, BuzzFeed style articles that we all are fans of clicking on. That is content.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And so again, content is entertain, inspire, or educate. So yeah, it could be how to, it could be who is your Little Mermaid best friend. I think definitely it'd be Sebastian, just if not Ursula, frankly.
I think I'm the bird, the seagull. I forget his name, but
Scuttle. This is the benefit
That's...
of having a best friend with tiny people who like to watch The Little Mermaid. Yes. But so content serves a very different purpose than copy does. And for that reason, content is paid differently than copy is. Copy, as we were saying in the last episode, a company can very directly attribute copy to revenue, to goals that it's trying to hit, because the messaging that you write to get people to purchase, or the messaging that you write to get people to take an action is directly attributable to the actions taken. But content, it's a little bit softer. It's a little bit more amorphous. So unfortunately, because it doesn't meet those same goals, it tends to be paid a little bit differently. And actually, that's not the only reason it's paid a little bit differently. One of those is that because copywriting has so many things that it's trying to do and so many methods of doing it. It requires a decent amount of training. It's a full career, and it requires a lot of training. Whereas content, because it's not trying to meet those same goals, it still certainly a valid career, don't get me wrong, but because content is not trying to meet those same goals and doesn't have those same requirements, it's a bit, I hesitate to say easier to write, but it's different to write. And it doesn't require that same level of training. So there tends to be a lower barrier to entry. It can be a great place for some people to start. And I know a lot of our students will say, oh yeah, I've tried writing blog posts or that kind of thing. A lot have not, of course, but some have. But there's a lower barrier to entry to get into content writing, which also means then that there is a lot of competition. And when there is a lot of competition, that means that people get paid less. Unfortunately, content writing, it's not unheard of to hear, like, on the way cheap end, people trying to get by with paying people $10 for a blog post or something like that. A little bit more common is where you get into 15 cents per word or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think a perfect example of the kind of the skill factor is, you might have 600 words to write something in a blog post. And so you can be very, you can be less judicious in your word choices versus, where you have a tiny space on a website for a headline, and you want to get it across in, really quick, really fast, 5 words. It's going to take you a lot more time and skill to really distill a message down to the crux of it versus, again, a blog post where you can really explain and have time to, kind of get into various things. I mean, as any of you who've tried either one or both, it takes a long time to edit down something than it does to say, oh, I hit 600 words, here it goes. I don't necessarily need to proofread, which you should, but you don't necessarily need to take out words or kind of rethink what you're saying and how you're saying it, because you have the room and you have the space. There's no real, there's less constraint.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I know too that, people may be hearing this and thinking, oh, well, if I can write a couple of blog posts a day, maybe 3 or 4 blog posts a day. And if I can write 3 or 4 or even 5 blog posts a day, and I can make $500 a day, then that's great. Then I've got my career. And that absolutely can work for a while. But I think most people who have tried to do that will tell you that it takes a lot to sit down and write 4 or 5 blog posts, and not just to do that once, but to do it every single workday. So Monday through Friday, or even, if you want to do some work on the weekends, to sit down and write straight through for 5 to maybe even 8 hours is exhausting. And a lot of people who try to do it, it's one of the reasons that content is really often thought of as a churn and burn industry, because it's easy to get into and it's really easy to burn out in order to try to make the level of income that you want to be making. Whereas, when you are writing 3, 4, 5 content articles to make $500, with copywriting, you could be writing, 1 homepage, and actually that's even a little bit cheaper a homepage, but rates vary, but you could be writing 1 homepage or writing a 3 email welcome series or something like that. And instead of doing that in 5, 8 hours, you're doing that in 2 or 3 hours, or you're taking on a sales page for a client and you're writing that for, again, really just kind of pulling numbers. It'll be different. Every project is different. Every client is different, but say you're writing a sales page and you're writing it for $1,500, and you got, maybe 2 of those, and that is your week. You're not working 8 hours a day, and you're not constantly writing just to get that word count, to get that out and to get your cash in so that you can just do the same thing the next day. It's very much churn and burn.
Yeah. And even when you are getting paid well to write a blog post, generally that means you're doing some level of research, or maybe you're interviewing someone. And so, yeah, maybe you get it up to $300-400 a post, but the amount of time it then takes you, you can't just churn. And so you're still doing a lot of work for a payoff that isn't as great.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. That's a really
Yeah.
great point. Yeah, that's a great point. It is possible to make a decent amount for a blog post, but yeah, then that might involve not just writing, but also doing research and then the editing afterwards. And so a $300 or $400 blog post ends up being an 8-hour job anyway.
Yep.
And so yes, you can sometimes blogs are charged by project, but sometimes they're charged by the word, which is sometimes newer copywriters will say, oh, how should I be charging? By the project, by the hour, by the word, and never as a copywriter should you be charging by the word, because as you were saying, Kate, part of what we do as copywriters is to figure out what the most compelling message is and to get it across in the most, well, balance the two, but the most interesting and concise way. And it's not easy to do that by any means. It takes, you need to learn the skills, and then it takes the practice, as our students know. But to be able to do that and get that across in an interesting and concise way takes a lot of effort and a lot of work. And the problem is charging by the word means that you are essentially penalizing yourself for doing your job well. So as you were saying, for a content writer, you want to be churning out those words and you want to just kind of head down and type. But as a copywriter, we don't want to be charging by the word, because part of what makes us good at what we do is that we're not just throwing any words on the page. And I'm not saying that that's what all content writers do by any means. But we're not just trying to throw as much wording on there as possible. We're actually trying to get rid of all of the extraneous words so that just the most compelling things are left, and the words that will make people pay attention and want to read more and take action.
Yeah. And frankly, I mean, I'd be a little wary of anyone wanting to pay by the word, both for copy and for content as well. Because really, if you want a solid piece of content, you don't want it to have just extra words here and there just for the sake of padding it, to be longer, or frankly, to not say things as concise as you possibly can. It's just not going to read as well and be as strong of a piece. And so it might not have the impact that business hopes it'll have. I think they choose that payment structure because it benefits them. Obviously, it's not benefiting the person they're paying. And so, yeah, I think, to go back to, as copywriters, then to the hourly, okay, hourly's left and by the project. And I would say both of us, by the project is, if when possible, kind of the best way to charge a project versus, hourly. Yes, some projects might, warrant themselves to that. Like if you don't know, a client wants to hire you and you're not quite sure what amount of work you'll be doing in a given month, and they say, oh, we want to, hire you for some things, but we don't know what yet. Okay, so maybe you start off, doing it by the hour, because you're like, well, I might have one Facebook post this month, and the next month it's 5, and with a couple of emails thrown in or whatever it is. But when you can, charging by the project really allows you to kind of estimate the amount of time it'll take. Obviously, you start basing it in kind of reality of how long it will take you, and your hourly rate. But that allows you to then say, okay, this website I'm writing, say I'm writing 3 pages for a website and I'm going to charge $3,000. That's literally based on nothing. So don't take that as pricing advice. We can get into that on another episode, I'm sure. But say you're charging $3,000 for a website, and it only takes you a handful of hours, then great. The client's happy, you're happy, everyone kind of wins. And frankly, the client knows off the bat, they know how to budget for the project. They say, okay, it's going to cost $3,000. You know what you're going to get paid for it. And you don't have to then worry necessarily about, going over the client's budget or, Yeah. And getting penalized for working fast, which I think is another issue. As you get better as a copywriter and you get faster, you don't want to penalize yourself for being good at your job.
Yeah, it's a benefit for the client if you're able to turn around work faster. Whereas if you're charging hourly and it takes you 3 hours to do it instead of 10 hours, you're penalizing yourself for being better at it. And we're not saying that you should ever be rushing through. You obviously always want to put your best foot forward. But if you have developed your skill and you get to the point where you're starting to write faster and you still have the same high level of work, but you're doing it faster, and you're charging by the hour, you're penalizing yourself. Whereas frankly, clients should be paying a premium to get that work back faster. Any type of service provider, if they want it fast, if you want a plumbing job fast, if you want an electrical job fast, you pay a premium to get that to go to the head of their line and to get that first. And charging by the project allows you to do that. Charging by the hour doesn't allow you to do that. And frankly, charging by the word, which obviously you wouldn't do as a copywriter, but charging by the word doesn't even give you any kind of options.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think as copywriters too, if you write content, you're going to want to charge your copywriting rates and by the project. You are adding value by being judicious with your word choices and making a really great piece of content because you are trained to say things in a compelling, concise way, which is such a benefit to whoever you're writing content for. And so you can charge your copywriting rates for that.
It's a great point. I don't want people who are listening to this thinking, oh, but I like to write blog posts every once in a while. Like I like to do that. If I become a copywriter, am I never going to be able to do that again? And no, that's not true. You can still write blog posts for clients. I mean, I know that you and I both have clients exactly that will ask us to do it. And frankly, I don't do it very often. But for certain clients, I'll write a blog post here and there. But yeah, I charge at my copywriting rate because they're getting the full expertise of a copywriter. And I'm thinking of it in terms of their entire business goals and the strategy and all of those elements. So it's they're getting a copywriting mind writing their content. And so I'm charging my copywriting rate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So thank you so much for listening. And eventually, as we get our podcast going, we hope you guys will leave us some podcast reviews. But until we get those, we wanted to read a review from one of our students. Tylen said, I just have to say, as I go through the course and poke around the various areas of the dashboard, I'm really blown away by how much real quality content is included. I've bought courses before, and with some appalling exceptions, they usually deliver on their promise, but they rarely over-deliver and virtually never to this extent. There is so much content here that Nicki probably didn't need to include, both skill sets and mindset, and I can't imagine how long it took to put it all together. A long time. Just feeling super grateful and appreciating your generosity and commitment to making sure we really have everything we need to do this, Nicki. I'm very happy I went with my gut and bit the bullet. Well, I am so happy you did too. And thank you so much for that, that fantastic review, Tylen.
Yeah, there's a lot of content to be had.
There's a lot of content. A lot. Yeah, speaking of content. But so thank you all for joining us on another episode. I hope everybody's very clear now on what constitutes copy and what constitutes content. And we'll be back with our next episode soon. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you don't miss any tips, tools, or tactics for copywriters by clicking subscribe right now. And of course, you can always find us over at filthyricwriter.com. We'll see you next time.